I'm Larry Mendte. Welcome to Jersey Matters. We are pleased to have back on the show Atlantic City Mayor Don Guardian. Thank you, sir, for coming in.
Thank you, Larry.
I was down in Atlantic City for the beginning of the summer, and I got to spend time in your office and walk the boardwalk with you, and you were so full of hope and optimism. Since that time, going through the summer, it seemed like there might not be reason to be so optimistic. Atlantic City went through some tough times, legal battles, legislative battles. What a week you're having now. All of a sudden there's reason for optimism once again. Go through, and I have to point out to people that we're taping this on the Friday right after the first of the year. And so things may change again by the time this airs next week. But go through the week you're having, some of the positive things that have happened to Atlantic City.
Sure. Well, first of all, Larry, it's a happy new year because finally 2015 is over. So 2016's got to be better, but it really was an exciting week. We started earlier this week with the Casino Reinvestment Development Authority approving 3 major projects, probably 3 largest projects they've completed in a long time. One is the final funding for Stockton University's Atlantic City campus, which will break ground in May.
Stop there for 1 second, because I want to stay with that. Yeah. When I talked to you at the beginning of the summer, you had high hopes, not only for Stockton, but for higher education, helping to turn around Atlantic City. You've been looking for something other than gambling. That can't be the sole industry in Atlantic City. And you were saying at the time, you mentioned several things, but higher education was high on there because, as you said, it was sustainable income.
Absolutely. Larry, that's the point. If we look at the difference between Hoboken and West New York, they may be next to each other, but Hoboken had Stevens. So Institute of Higher Learning, continuing education is critical to really make a city great. And that's what we're trying to do to Atlantic City. So it's not just becoming a good tourism center again, beyond just being gaming-centric, it's really building it into a great city. And bringing a university, the first phase, break ground in May, open by fall of 2018. The academic building will house 1,800 students, and the first residential hall will be completed with 500 students.
And that's a done deal now. That is going to happen.
Well, no, nothing happens until the fat lady sings. So, the shovel's got to get in the ground, and then, you got to have the student coming in. But it looks very, very promising.
But all the obstacles that were in the way seem to be cleared.
That's correct.
What else this week?
So also with that, in the same location is South Jersey Gas parent company, South Jersey Industry, has agreed to build a corporate headquarters in Atlantic City for 200 jobs. It'll be adjourning the campus at Stockton, and it'll have a parking garage for 850 vehicles. They'll use 200. The other 650 will be available for Stockton. So that's exciting. At the other end of town, we have Barai, who's done a marvelous job in both New Brunswick and Newark with housing, coming down, building the first new housing that we've had in a long time, 250 units of market rate housing. I shouldn't say that because 50 is going to be affordable housing. It'll be job-ready housing. But the 200 will be high-end. We're very exciting. That's in front of where the showboat was. So those are 3 projects that are very good.
And the legislature is helping you.
Legislature, huge. So the governor calls a summit a year and a half ago. Everyone comes down. They said we've got to make Atlantic City more affordable for businesses. We've got to control the cost of government. I get my emergency managers and his team, and the Senate President, Steve Sweeney, puts together a series of bills to help us out, guaranteeing that casinos aren't going to be able to file tax appeals for the next 15 years, and also locking it in with the amount of money they're going to pay, $120 million. So that was phase 1. Phase 2 was $30 million in 15 and $30 million in 16. That formally went for marketing with the Atlantic City Alliance, is coming to the city to help us pay debt. And the third part is the alternate tax credits that casinos had. So it comes in about $32 million a year to the CRDA, except for that's used for debt service. About $8 million will be coming to the city as well. So a big package to help stabilize our city, to make sure that we can deliver no tax increase again this year.
And correct me if I'm wrong, the big holdup seemed to be they wanted more accountability from you and how you're going to use the money.
No question. I can't disagree with them. Governor Christie is a Reagan kind of guy. You know, he trusts you, but he wants to verify. And he wants to make sure that we're going to continue to do everything we can in the municipality to make sure that we're providing government at the lowest cost.
And it's fair to say that before you took office, the accountability of money that went to Atlantic City wasn't sterile.
Well, what I want to say is that I'm here to correct the future. There was a lot of funding in Atlantic City. I wasn't part of it at the time, but I'm here to make sure that I correct both the sins of our forefathers as well as prepare us for the future.
Right, so you understand why the legislators around the state, not just Chris Christie, would look at money to go to Atlantic City and said, hey, wait, let's wait a second.
Absolutely.
But that's all taken care of.
Yeah, it is. And, you know, we're above board now. We're saying here, this is what's costing per police officer in Atlantic City, and this is why we think it makes a whole lot of sense. This is where crime is reducing. This is what we're doing with the use of force. This is the streets we're paving. These are the lights that we're improving. This is the cost for recreation. These are best practices that we found in other cities around the state and around the country that we're adopting for Atlantic City. And so, you know, $40–50 million is what we're talking about, the difference in the 2016 budget from the 2014 budget 2 years ago, and 350 fewer employees working for the city.
You talked about the lights. You mentioned the lights, and I know these lights are going in to light up the entire boardwalk to make it safer, I would imagine. Yeah. Are you still having that problem? I mean, I remember that people were worried about going to Atlantic City because of crime. Sure. You still having that?
Well, I think you're going to have the perception of crime wherever you have an urban area. But I want to tell you, the boardwalk is the safest street in America. Based on the number of people that walk on the boardwalk, the very, very little amount of crime that we have there, it's very safe. But what do you do when you're a tourist destination? You make sure that police officers are highly visible, you make sure there's a lot of lighting, and you make sure you're doing everything else to make sure that public safety gets a high-end mark in your city.
How nice is it to go through an entire segment, the first segment of this show, and all we talked about were positive things with Atlantic City?
It's very nice, Larry.
That's going to change in the second segment because we're going to talk a little bit about presidential politics, and I also want to talk about Glenn Straub and what casinos are going to survive when we continue our conversation on Jersey Matters with Mayor Don Guardian.